Okay, so for the um, tutorial for today, what we're going to look at is just a very brief introduction into NoSQL and um, MongoDB in particular, to learn about how a little bit of these schemaless databases kind of work. I started just recently trying to play with it, and I'm also going to do a brief introduction of a Docker Compose file I wrote, which allows for easy startup if you're using a web app server with PHP to connect to the MongoDB. So first up, what's the difference between, say, SQL versus NoSQL? This is a very high-level overview. Again, not going to go into great detail, but a SQL database is what's known as a relational database. It has a particular schema or a table which saves the data, and all data that's inputted must conform to the table structure that is dictated when you first create the database. And that all needs to be set up before you can even start working with it. Now, it has a lot of benefits in the sense that you can't put in wrong types of data. You can't put in things that are sort of unexpected. And it makes it very good for doing things like user account management, doing logins, credential management, saving things like financial information, accounting data, things that need to be structured so that when you pull them back or when you read them back, you can read them back quickly, and then you can sort of manipulate how you read them back. So we showed a little bit about how that works in previous videos about creating and using a LAMP stack to create kind of like a very brief product ordering page. But it's not always suitable for large types of data. So this is where NoSQL comes in. So NoSQL is schemaless. Its database, or sort of quote unquote database structure, is actually made of collections, and I'll show an example in a minute. The collection contains various JSON objects, which can sort of function in the same sense of a database. So, instead of asking a database for a table, and then from the table I pick out the row or the item that I'm looking for, in MongoDB or NoSQL, you kind of say, well, I want to pick from this collection. Is there anything in this collection that has maybe this name associated with it, or this age, or something like that? So I have a brief example, and I want to share that example with everyone. And I'll also link the source code, or it's not really code, it's just a Docker Compose file with some very basic sort of getting started PHP scripts. But I'm going to link that in the blog description as normal. But let's get started. To get started, I decided to do things properly this time. So rather than just put everything into Google Docs, we have a GitHub. So from this GitHub, what we can do is view the YAML file along with the README, which talks a little bit about getting started. This, again, is the way in which I chose and hopefully can offer to the community. Just a very easy way to have everything get brought up with a MongoDB stack, Mongo Express, which is a nice utility for working with MongoDB, and also a PHP Apache server with the MongoDB drivers built in. So what you have is a Docker Compose file. This is largely based on the official image from Mongo. So you can see here they have Mongo, and then they recommend Mongo Express. And from here, I added a separate container, changed the passwords from the default, and again, if you choose to use this script, you can change this to anything you want. Then this web server is based loosely off of the Apache web server we did in a previous LAMP stack build, which was PHP Apache with MySQL. This is a MongoDB version. So now a lot of the work here is actually handled by the Docker file. So when we build that PHP Apache container, all of that gets, this does the updates, lets us install the MongoDB drivers. We also install Composer, which is what the MongoDB PHP driver recommends for adding all of this. So if you look at all of their information here, they say you need this Composer, require MongoDB. I needed a slight workaround because of how I'm mounting the directory into this. So it took a while to figure out, but it's there, it's done. And this should all just work. So if you wanted to get started with this, I already have a Git clone of this Mongo LAMP. If you want to know how to run a Git clone, as long as you have Git running on your system, you can just do Git clone and just copy the address, Control-Shift-V, paste it in here, and if you run that, it will go download the files and make this folder MongoLAMP over here in this directory. So because it's already there, we're not going to bother. We're going to go into MongoLAMP. From here, you can have the Docker Compose. And honestly, the only thing that you would need to do if you're first starting this out, if you have all of the Docker dependencies and everything up and running, is just run sudo. If you're on Linux, sudo. Windows, Mac OS, you need to have the user permissions. Docker compose up, password, and then this is going to go create everything. Because this system was already primed, so a lot of the information that was put in here, the images, etc., all of that is already existing. If this was a new install, before launching here we have the logging terminal output of Docker Compose. It would go and fetch the images and build everything. Right now everything's built, it just needed to recreate containers. And we can already see we have a slight error right here, which I'll talk about in just a sec. Now let's just see what containers are running. So we'll do sudo docker ps. This will show our running containers. Password again. Okay, so we have 2 containers out of 3. And the issue is here. We see MongoX exited with code 0. What happened is the MongoX, as I understand, is it sort of tries to jump the gun a bit. So it tries to start before the MongoDB container is ready. But we can easily fix this. So the Docker Compose does create the container. So we can check Docker ps-a to see all of our containers. So we can see the MongoX is created here. Okay, so up about a minute, exited about a minute ago. So, but what we can do is just manually start the MongoX. So sudo docker start MongoX. Okay, now we'll run sudo docker ps again. And now everything's running. Okay, so at this point, we're up and we're good to go. So in the file, or in the source directory that we have in this source, I do have a couple of very simple, like very trivial web pages. But what they do is hopefully show a little bit more about how exactly PHP works with MongoDB. So I left that in there as sort of like example code, or for which you can get started just as I am, because I'm just starting working on this myself. So here, if we just go to localhost, we have a very simple HTML form And before I fill that in, it's just ask for a name and the age. And what that does is it'll put in a new user credentials or new user information to the MongoDB. But let's have a look at the MongoDB. And we're going to do that by looking at the Mongo Express. So we go localhost, and in the open this over here, get a little bit easier. Just open the compose so you can see that. In here, we bind the Mongo Express to these ports 8081. So we just go localhost 8081. There we go. Now this is Mongo Express, and from Mongo Express you can kind of see exactly how the structure of MongoDB works. If we click here, say this is showing our databases. If we click into admin, we can see that admin has already a couple of collections. The collections, again, is where MongoDB stores the files. So to an extent, you can kind of think of them a little bit like tables in a structured database, except that the collections can be brought up and created on the fly. The databases themselves as well. So when you go in and you look, you can see, okay, these are the credentials, these are the things that it's entering. So you have a user ID, you have this ID of the object, and then everything gets saved as a JSON object in the system. So we go back. Now here we have 3 databases. As soon as I enter this, what we're going to do is create another database, and we'll have a code walkthrough once I do this. So let me just add a user, maybe named Bill, and we'll say Bill is, I don't know, 43. Submit. Okay. So we got Bill, age 43, getting started selected, getting started user selected. I had just changed the code in a previous run, so let me just open that up real quick. We're not going to look for Bob. We're going to look for whatever we insert. Okay. Rerun. Okay. Yep. Now what we're going to see here is a getting started database. Okay. So we inserted. We said DB getting started selected, collection getting started user selected, user inserted successfully Bill, and it found it twice because I refreshed the page. So let's refresh this. There's the new database. Here's the collection of users, and we see there's 2 users. So right off the bat, you'll see maybe one of the things that can be a little bit confusing, I guess, about NoSQL or these kinds of schemaless databases. The exact ID to when you import, unless you're like defining it or something, it gets created for you. So you can have multiple entries with the same information. This can be good, this can be not good. It just depends on exactly what kind of information you're storing. Right now we're just saying that there's users and they have this age. So it's not like an access credential or something where you need to really worry about it. In fact, probably what you'd be using NoSQL databases is probably, I would guess, less things like authentication, where you have like fixed passwords and keys and so on, and more for things like storing blog posts or big blocks of data or blobs of data, which can fit in really well into this kind of object-oriented database structure. So what we can do is also create another user. So we just go back, and instead of Bill, maybe we'll make Jill, or we'll add Jill, and Jill's maybe a bit younger than Bill. She's 39. Say submit. Okay, we added Jill to the database, and this time, because I didn't refresh the page, it should come up as just one entry, and it does. So you can kind of get an idea of how this works. Now, if we take a deeper look at the code, this is where all the connection to the database and inserting and everything happens. This is just an HTML form. So if you want to look at the, so the HTML form itself, extremely simple. This is, again, just for testing. So it's just a reference, which I just include in the GitHub, just to hopefully help people get started. Again, I just started learning this myself. So quick post, then we say, okay, the action. So once we submit it, we're going to send this information over to the insert new user.php. From here, first we need to require the libraries, essentially. So there's, when we run the composer command in the Docker file, we can take a quick look at that. When we run the composer file, when we first build the container, composer does this require MongoDB. And what that does is composer then goes forth and builds all of the library packages that we need in order to interact with the MongoDB. So without this line here of require, from where the packages are created, and I do dictate that I want these things to be placed into the directory var www. So when we build it, the packages all get placed in the container under var www. Then we're capturing the name and the age from index. So name and the age, what we entered in that form, gets pulled in. This is just standard post, no database yet. We're then just showing, okay, this is the name that we're getting, so confirming that PHP did grab it from post. Then we're establishing a connection to the MongoDB, so we have this MongoDB/client, and then access credentials. These access credentials are the same string as what we put in the YAML file for the Docker Compose. So the same way Mongo Express is connecting to the MongoDB, we will also connect from the PHP web server to MongoDB. By default, it's at port 27017. Then we're creating a connection, and then this connection is essentially going to define what database we're going to use. In MongoDB, unlike in MySQL, if the database doesn't exist, it creates it for you. So we can see right here that the new database is created. Then we create a collection, which I'm using the variable name col, because I'm lazy and I don't like typing that much. And then we're saying, okay, collection, you're going to pull this database and you're going to write to the users collection. And again, if it doesn't exist, MongoDB will create it. And then we can put in the user information. So we have this doc, which is what we want to insert. And then we can use the command insert1 to insert the doc and then update the information to the MongoDB. Then the last bit of this code is we just kind of confirm that it's inserted. So we just look for the exact name that we just put in. If we looked for a different name, which is what happened initially, I had a different name written here, we could also pull different names and different other credentials and things from the DB backend or the collection backend. We can also change this. So if we want to just vet that, we can just say, oh, we're going to getting started 2. The collection is going to be users 2, and then it would go forth and create a new database and a new collection with the new names. So we can just demonstrate that again. Same website. Joe is maybe 52. Submit. Okay, then we got this. Everything's entered. And if we go back to the Mongo Express, we see we now have 2 databases, Getting Started and Getting Started 2. And then Getting Started 2 has a users 2 collection view, and you have this new user populated. So a pretty quick tutorial. Just wanted to make a brief introduction, sort of share what I've been playing with and learning. I've recently been taking a lot of courses about using cloud computing technologies. There's a huge emphasis on Nosql there. So I wanted to just have sort of like my own sort of test environment. And since I finally got it up and running, I thought I'd share it and just put this video out as a quick run through. So I hope it's helpful to those of you interested, and thank you very much.